The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 years, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists. Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor.
Good evening. Good happy Friday, people.
Victoria Jones from Satoshi's Page.
Hey, hey, happy Friday, everyone.
Josh Shigala from thestandard.io.
Oh, why, hello there. I didn't see you come in.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to Issue 1. Issue 1. Founders and CEO of cryptocurrency mixing service arrested and charged with money laundering and unlicensed money transmitting offenses. Samurai Wallet, Keon Rodriguez, and William Lonergan Hill have been charged with operating Samurai Wallet, which the U.S. government says is an unlicensed money transmitting business that has executed over $2 billion in unlawful transactions and laundered more than $100 million in criminal proceeds. Dan Eve, what do you think about the sudden indictment, extradition, and arrest of the Samurai Wallet founders?
Well, I mean, to start with, it does seem like they were treading on thin ice by having material in marketing material to say, you know, how what the benefits of using their system could be for illicit activities, for example. So I think that might have been, you know, the part of the reason why they were caught on compared to other mixing services. But the fact that they've said it's didn't have a money transmitter license is interesting, right? Because isn't Bitcoin still not considered as money in the US? So how can you be considered having required a money transmitting license when you're not actually transmitting money, because Bitcoin's apparently not money, it's a commodity. So that's an interesting one. I'd like them to sort of find out what the reason is behind that, right? It can't be both. It can't be the quantum level, whichever one they want it to be. It's either one or the other. It's money or a commodity. But it's sad, right? It's another bad day for Bitcoin's privacy. People want privacy in their financial transactions. We've seen this CDBCs on the verge of coming in where they can, put a social score to your bank balance and reject you from getting a packet of crisps. You know, if you haven't, said your daily prayers to Klaus Schwab and co. So yeah, it's all looking quite crazy, isn't it? So we kind of would like our financial privacy, and it's a shame that again they're going after all these crypto founders. Where all these for money laundering? Where's the heads of HSBC? What, $800-900 million money laundered? Where did they go? Did they go to the jail? No one went to jail, did they? No one goes to jail for the traditional banking system. They just seem to go after all the crypto services. It's pretty sad, really.
It does seem like a quantum problem, as you said, Dan. The IRS says that Bitcoin is property, so they can tax it under capital gains tax. The FBI says it's money, so they can arrest you for money transmission. So it does seem like it's both things, whichever benefits the government at that time. And I do think they made a huge mess with their marketing, advertising that they were going to profit off of illicit activity, even informing their investors and saying, hey, you investors, you too could profit off of the illicit activity that we're encouraging. And I think that part of that is not just the marketing, but the way they set up their system from the beginning, where from what I've read of the document from the DOJ, Samurai Wallet was taking a cut from these mixings. So while many people are saying, yes, they didn't send the money themselves, it was the users using the software that caused the problem. If they design the software so that they take a cut, especially a cut of these wonderful anonymous transactions that you can use to buy anything you want on the internet, they're taking a cut of drug dealing, money laundering, child trafficking, murder, execution, anything. You have no idea what you're taking a cut of, and it's incredibly dangerous along with the marketing materials. I do want to note, though, for those interested in World Crypto Network history, that we have interviewed Samurai Wallet. Not very many people have done this before. We did this in 2018 at HCPP with Max Hillebrand and myself. You can see the samurai person in a mask with a hat on. You can't see their face, all that. And we interviewed them again in 2019 with Dan Eve right there on the couch with me again at HCPP in 2019. So it's very cool if you check out World Crypto Network in the archives. And if you can spell samurai the wrong way that I spelled it twice, maybe you can find it. We're going to look into the spelling of the word samurai after this episode. Victoria Jones, what do you think about Samurai Wallet? Suddenly busted, suddenly not so private anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why it's an issue that will worry a lot of Bitcoiners. You know, obviously, personal privacy is a big issue for all of us. One of the things I often say when we're discussing the same issue at conferences is that the problem we've got at the moment is that the government want all the secrecy and they expect us to be transparent. And what we want Bitcoin to do is kind of flip the narrative. You know, because the base layer is transparent, that gives us the opportunity to, you know, have more transparency over what governments are doing. But, you know, individuals who are more vulnerable, especially when they operate as individuals, then it's important that they have privacy. You know, there are certain domestic situations where it's really important that you know, things are kept private. You know, if you've got a woman in a violent marriage, for example, you know, maybe the only way in which she can escape is by keeping her finances private and collecting some money on the side so that she can escape. You know, you've got refugees who've only been able to escape from their countries because they've got a means of keeping their income private and crossing borders. And so, you know, having private transactions is a really important facility for us to be providing. However, having said that, you know, there are legal laws and there are also moral laws. And if you're deliberately poking the bear to say, you know, it doesn't matter what you do, we can do this, we can break your legal laws, but if you're not breaking them in order to uphold a moral law, you're really kind of getting into some tricky territory. You know, there are natural laws that say it's not a good thing to encourage criminals or facilitate what they do or help them out. And so to actually deliberately advertise that that's who you want to help, I think was definitely an own goal. I mean, the thing is, you know, a lot of us in Bitcoin, a lot of us Bitcoiners are in Bitcoin because we want to help make the world a better place. But if you're using that tool to try and encourage the darker sides of humanity, then I think someone needs to call you to account. And as much as, you know, we abhor the US legal system, you know, it may well be a case of the pot calling the kettle black, because there are a lot of people pointing out, you know, where they're participating in illegal activities. At the same time, you know, I was always taught growing up that two wrongs don't make a right. And so, you know, to be more criminal than the criminals does not seem like a good strategy.
It is very much a moral issue, as you're saying, Victoria, where morally we want privacy, we want private transactions. But when you advertise or put in your pitch deck that if you want to profit with our company, we're going to use the gray market, we're going to use the illicit market, like you're saying, which could be something harmless like a marijuana sale, or it could be somebody kidnapping somebody, which is very harmful. It could be an assassination. We have no idea what this money is used for. So it's very hard for them to stand on the moral issues where we're all together on the moral issue. We want the privacy, but it's that profit that got in the way. It's that company thing. They kind of mixed the startup with the moral issues, and then they went out and raised money on these pitch decks. And like you're saying, Victoria, sometimes there is a need for a private transaction. We have this thing right now where all cars are kind of going digital, and they're going to have a choice soon where they can say, let's lock the speedometer. Let's say you can't go over 80 miles an hour, 100 kilometers an hour. And most of the time that's fine because people are speeding because they're lazy, they're in a hurry, they're late, they're bored, they don't care, they have a fast car, they like speeding, whatever it is. There's a lot of good, fun reasons for speeding, right? But like you're saying, when it comes down to an emergency, your wife's pregnant, you have to get to the hospital, your friend has been shot, somebody's bleeding to death, you have this reason to go faster. And like you were saying in the many examples, there is sometimes a reason for privacy. But what they did in the pitch deck and the advertising is really hard to defend. Josh Shigala, what are your thoughts on Samurai Wallet being taken in by the U.S. government today?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, it's a weird charge because they haven't transmitted any money. The wallet is a coin join, which is protocol level. Like they haven't touched any funds. Like any service, you can create it and make it split off some to you. I mean, you've got personnel, you got to pay, you got to do things like that. So you got to, yeah. I mean, obviously, if you make something, you want to get paid for it. So I don't see that as a problem. But privacy in money is really important. I mean, there's a reason why you don't go telling everyone how much money you've got. It's normal. It's not, it's a weird world we live in where we've suddenly woken up and said, you can name all of the bad things in the world. You can just name them and say, that's what you're allowing to happen. It's like, no, that happens uh, anyway. And money, sure, you want to stop all that stuff happening. You want to stop all that stuff happening, but that comes down to police work and about, stopping them. Stopping a good form of money is punishing the 99.9% of people that actually use it for good for the few tiny minority. Look, I doubt that there were many criminals using that service. I really doubt it, because if you're a criminal that's worth half your anything, you probably want to use Monero instead, because it's just far more secure than a coin join. There's other like, if you have a business, you don't want your customers to know how much your stock was or where you bought the stock from, because your customers will just bypass you as a business and go to the cheaper thing or your stockist. Or if they can't, because it's only a bulk buying place where you get the stuff from, like, I don't know, if you're selling mugs or whatever, then then they know how much you bought it for, and then they get pissed off because you might be charging too much or whatever it is. So the secrecy is also important for employees. Sure, you might have a system where it's egalitarian, everybody knows how much everyone's getting paid, but I can tell you it doesn't work, because maybe you brought someone on and paying them something, and then someone else comes along and they're demanding something more, and then you find out that they're actually worse than the other person, so you have to renegotiate, and you have to, like, there's so many reasons why you don't want every time you pay something that everyone can see exactly what you're doing. It's just stupid. But instead, we go around the world, go around all the time, and everyone does this and says, child exploitation, kidnapping, and it's like, well, yeah, it's terrible. Of course, ban it. But cash is even more transparent. More secretive. Sorry. So what, should we just ban all cash? It's not a good starting place. We need privacy in money. It's just part of having good currency is having that layer of privacy. And yeah, I just don't think that Samurai is anything evil. I think what's happening right now is there's a massive witch hunt. We've got CZ get pulled down. He never stole any funds. We've got Samurai now. We've got a whole bunch of stuff in the news. That's basically a takedown now that we've got custodial NFT ETFs, and Michael Saylor's all happy. The actual functionality of peer-to-peer electronic cash that is cash, meaning there should be a layer of privacy there, is going away. And I guess this is what everybody was scared of, that when these ETFs started coming out, that more and more institutions would just come in and you take down anything that might have a sniffing of illicit or untraceability, because obviously you can trace everything when it comes to the ETF. That the ETF is not a scaling solution, as much as the big boys want to say it is. It's it's not. And yeah, so I don't know. I'm pretty sad about it. I think it's a bad thing for Bitcoin. I don't think we should equate everything to all this evil that's in the world that does need to be dealt with, obviously. Um, but we have to deal with it in a better way than just deleting the ability of every good person on earth to do anything good, like, you know, banning shoes because robbers run away with wearing shoes. You know, you just don't ban shoes. Yeah, but evildoers wear shoes. It's a stupid argument. It's a dumb argument. Sorry, Thomas. But
With that
I,
as well,
yeah,
that the ETFs are, you know, a kind of a scaling solution. I've seen that as well for Bitcoin. And surely then that you could argue that like exchanges are scaling solutions for Bitcoin.
and they argue that. Yep.
Yeah, it's just going down a rabbit hole there itself, right? It's like
Yeah.
not your keys, not your coins, ultimately, right? That, you know, scaling needs to be decentralized, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do think you're right, though, Josh, that they've developed this new way for you to own Bitcoin. You can own Bitcoin
Yeah.
in Coinbase, or you can own it in one of these ETFs. And any
Mm.
other way of owning Bitcoin is kind of sus, right? We're going back to the old pirate Silk Road days, right? Where you're like, oh, you're into Bitcoin? Oh, you mean not the ETFs, not the Coinbase, that dirty stuff that happens
Yeah.
outside of the exchanges, you know, that we don't know what's happening. And I do think we're going into that. And again, I do think we're going to have this time where, sadly, most of the Bitcoiners turn against Bitcoin. They say
Mm.
Bitcoin's become too corporate and Bitcoin is just advertising talk now. And I'm into, you know, Z coin and Y coin and ZY coin and all these other new things that are hipper and slicker. But again, I don't think that Bitcoin changes. I think that all these people, you know, they take Bitcoin in, they say it's our CNBC Bitcoin now, it's our, you know, Sailor Bitcoin, it's our ETF Bitcoin. And all the while, Bitcoin just kind of stays the same and just keeps clicking along. And then eventually they realize that they can't control this and that they can't keep everyone in the ETFs and all this other stuff is happening. And then all the Bitcoin people come back and we're happy again. But
Well,
we
I
have
don't
to
know.
go
Like
through that, right?
it, I don't know. I really see the alts as an actual decentralized scaling solution for the idea of money. Yeah, it might not scale Bitcoin itself, but you if Bitcoin becomes you know, two, three, $400 a transaction, you know, I mean, we used to laugh and make memes about Western Union costing $5 to send 50. So 10%, what? Bitcoin's 10 cents or 5 cents or 3 cents or less than a cent. Now, $50. Like it's literally $50 a transaction. So it needs to scale. There needs to be a scale. Yeah, Lightning is an option. That's great. Layer twos are an option in other ways, but they're also different chains. Like RSK is a different chain. These side chains are a different chain. So, and if we don't scale, then the exchanges do become the scaling solution. You know, so we will have a two-tiered Bitcoin because and I see the same thing with self-driving cars. What, you want to drive your own car? You a terrorist? Are you a terrorist? Because you could kill someone if you drive your own car. It's like, okay, but we all used to all drive our own cars. Yeah, but what? Wow. Yeah, I can't believe it. You're going to drive into a Christmas market, you sicko. Like, you know, like this is the sort of thinking, and this is what will probably happen, is that anyone that wants to deal with normal Bitcoin is automatically labeled terriblest.
And going back to some of your other arguments, Josh, about the privacy, we have all these really clever sayings, and they're almost like little bumper stickers. And sometimes they're a shortcut to thinking. And one of them that people say is, sunshine is the best disinfectant. And it's this idea that privacy is always bad and public things are always good. But as we know in the United States from James D'Angelo's great work on this, in the 70s, Nixon overturned private voting for Congress. And everyone said, oh, this is great. The sunshine is coming in. It will disinfect. But what it's actually done is it's given the lobbyists an accurate count of who votes for and against their bill. So in the past, the lobbyists would pay you and they'd pay this guy, and they don't know how you're voting. They don't know if they're getting a good deal. But now they know. So it's actually increased the power of the lobbyists while it has this sunshine, which is supposed to save us, this openness, but it's actually failed. And it's really easy. I mean, you just look at anything that Nixon did, kind of assume it might be bad. But then you have a lot of things to go through. But yeah, it's things like that where the bumper sticker says sunshine is the best disinfectant. But in reality, we grow a whole plate full of moldy lobbyists that conquer and take over everything. And we're underestimating, like, things aren't just a vacuum. There are other things that will come in and take over. But I think we've gone pretty far on this issue. We're going to go to the exit question. Forced prediction, predict the future. Dan Eve, the Samurai Wallet founders, innocent or guilty?
Oh man, that's a tough one. It depends what of, right? I mean, I hope they're innocent. I hope that this is going to be a win for privacy and a win for Bitcoin in general. So yeah, but hopefully they'll be okay. But I've got a feeling that it's definitely prosecution season, right? It's open hunting season at the moment. So imagine what the financial world would be like if they did that in the existing world. You know, especially after all the sort of big crisis of 2007, 2008. Maybe things would be different now. Who knows? Cool.
It does seem that still none of the people from the financial crisis have been taken to prison. There's been no arrests. I mean, I check the paper every day. No arrests. We're still waiting. Victoria Jones, what do you think? Innocent or guilty?
Well, I mean, I have to say some of their tweets mentioned in that article were a bit of an own goal, weren't they? I mean, talk about going, hey guys, come and get me. They were just asking for trouble. And, in terms of being a money transmitter, I mean, you could argue that anyone who runs a Lightning node, on the basis of the fact that you collect Lightning fees, could be a money transmitter. So how far do you take it?
Exactly.
I mean, the US government's ability to prosecute this to the end goal is pretty limited. But of course, often in these scenarios, they'll aim for the low-hanging fruit in order to make a point and hopefully scare people off temporarily. So I think it will be a good talking point. I think if they are prosecuted, it's their own silly fault for being quite so blatant about wanting to encourage the nefarious activities they're doing, because regardless of whether they used it as a money or not, the fact that they were prepared to advertise that they wanted to encourage that kind of activity, in my book, is someone needs to call them to account for that. So I think on that basis, they deserve to be prosecuted. But I think in the fullness of time, Bitcoin will be fine.
Well, and it's very interesting how it's one thing to write a journal or an article or to espouse that you have a political view or you have a belief on privacy, but it's another thing to actually write the code that goes with that belief. When they chose to do that, they should have thought about where they were on the earth. And I haven't looked at the details, but I assume they're in an extradition country that has a deal with the US where if you break the law bad enough, you'll get busted by the US. And I think everyone knows this is a possibility, going back to the alleged Dread Pirate Roberts, Ross Ulbricht, who was in the United States despite the fact that his family owned a home in Costa Rica, which isn't great, but would have been better. As they said in the Zhao Tong song, maybe next time you won't be on our shores. But that lesson keeps not getting learned. And if you're in an extradition country, such as in the EU or anyone else who has massive trade agreements with the United States, it's likely that you'll be extradited if you break the law enough. The Pirate Party is a good example, I think. They haven't been extradited. The Pirate Bay, the founders of that, haven't been extradited. Same thing, though, but they're maybe just breaking copyright law, which, as Josh said, you can't expand copyright law necessarily to child kidnapping or murder or any of the other dangerous crimes, which you could say generically, if you have money, you can buy horrible things. But Josh Agala, you're the last vote. Innocent or guilty?
I think Starship Schrodinger's Destiny here in the chat makes a good point. Probably be a little bit of a settlement there or something. But yeah, I technically I don't think that they can win because they just were never transmitting any funds. They the protocol does it, and they just wrote the code that the protocol can use a coin join. I mean, it's not, there was not one single cent that went through their hands that laundered. So yeah, and yeah,
Well,
I
just
just
to play
technically I don't think.
devil's advocate here, though, Josh, like if they took fees, I don't know how it's set up, but let's say you want to have a whirlpool or a coin join, and you have to pay $5, and you use your whirlpool to have financial privacy. Somebody else uses it for illicit means. We have no idea. We're just selling you whirlpools. I think it's the
No,
fees. It's the fees that leads to a problem here.
yeah, it could be. It could be. And I'm no lawyer, but I know that the Americans have fun digging around in the weeds, their technical weeds. So I think that's probably where they'll want to dig around in those technicalities.
Isn't it
Because
kind of like
So
isn't it kind of like the
it,
equivalent of having a hotel room, like but not having privacy in the hotel room? It's like you can have a hotel room, but you can't have privacy
yeah,
just in case you're doing something illegal. So we need to make sure that you're not doing anything. It's like that, right? It's like them
yeah, yeah,
having
yeah.
well,
Well, you can have a
sadly,
hotel room, but just a glass door and no curtains.
yeah.
exactly. Well, it's about the design of the hotel room, and I think with this, as with the Silk Road, it gets back to this crack house defense, where people were basically renting out their houses to bad people, and the houses were becoming crack houses. And they're like, we need a way to punish the person that's renting out the house. So what they said when they took down Ross Ulbricht, and again, agree or disagree with that, one of the things they said is that when he set up the Silk Road, he set it up as a crack house, right? It had all these secret compartments and all these like hidden things you'd use for smuggling and all these systems where it's set up like that. And sadly, I think Samurai Wallet's going to be painted in the same way. And mainly, I think that it's because what I'm saying with Josh here is that it's the fees. Because they made money on the illicit activity, they become guilty for part of the illicit activity. Maybe if they didn't have the fees, they could say, well, we didn't profit, but then it goes back to these marketing materials and the pitch deck and whatever else they have where they say, yeah, we plan to profit on illicit activity, which is just a horrible thing. You should never, if you're typing that in your pitch deck right now, erase that. Like, write something else. Like, you can't provide
It
this kind of
seems weird.
statement, even if
I
you're in
can't
like, you're like
imagine that they
Russia or
did that.
somewhere. I mean,
I, I feel that might be propaganda from the DOJ because um, there's I don't understand that someone would actually market, hey, do illegal things and send it through us. Uh, I'd have
I
to
think
see that to
you're
believe it.
underestimating like their kind of idea of freedom or their like belief in libertarianism. And I imagine if you're in somewhere else in the world, you're not in the United States, and you're just kind of mouthing off, and you're just kind of, it's like almost a teenager, like a childlike belief in privacy, where you're like, privacy's so good, you could even use it for, money laundering, and we don't care. And they just went down a slippery slope that way. And I'm sure that the slides and everything else will come out in the trial if it is as they say, Josh. So we'll see. But yeah, it just seems like I think they're kind of young guys, and they had an idealistic belief in the freedom and stuff, and then they went on this way towards raising money and profiting, and it got all mixed up, and
I mean, I can
now they're
understand
in
them
big
saying
trouble.
something that they believe in. Like if they believe that you should be able to buy and sell drugs, then they might say, you can do that. Um, and that's illegal. So then, yeah, I don't know. I'd have to see the marketing material. I just find it hard if they actually
They have provided a
hard to
few
believe.
tweets so far, and the tweets are, it's kind of ironic, like hipster marketing. It's like kind of in your face. Um, I forget the details, but somebody was busted for doing something illegal, and they were like, "We welcome all these new people as Samurai Wallet customers." And so it's kind of a joke, but a dozen of these jokes, and they
The
stack
Russian
them on you
Yeah.
in trial.
oligarchs.
Yeah, the Russian oligarchs, that was
They
it. And
they
they're
were
like,
they were suggesting that the Russian oligarchs could use their services to circumvent US sanctions.
and that's something that
Ooh.
seems like a fun tweet at the time, and you're like, this will be funny, and my buddies will like it. But in the clear light of day, with the potentially illegality of this project, it's just a bad tweet. It's just, and there's a series of these where I think, like you're saying, Josh, they felt very free. These guys had true
Yeah.
freedom in their head, but it was a very small zone. It wasn't the whole world that was free. It was just
But I
kind of
don't
their
think it's an
minds.
illegality of their product. It was that other people could do illegal things. Like it's not illegal for us to put a whole bunch of Bitcoin into one pot, mix it up, and then take Bitcoin out again. That's just not illegal. It's not. There's nothing anywhere that says that that's not allowed.
It's strange, but I think it comes down
doing
to
things beforehand with that coin and then adding those coins in, even, it's the thing that they're doing that's illegal. Like the people, if they're, kidnapping or whatever, some of the bad things. But a lot of people just want privacy from their Bitcoin. They just want privacy, and that's also.
I think it's all about how you set up the service. If you set it up as like random Satoshi generator and it's a big spinning wheel, like you're saying, Josh, and you're like, I put my money in, I get other money out. And that's it. And there's no marketing, and there's no like pitch deck, and there's no Twitter account saying kind of sensationalist stuff. And if you market it as like, we're goofy, we're random Satoshi spinner. You can spin and get random Satoshis. I think you might be okay, but you have to think ahead with these kind of things. If you're going to like start a company like allegedly the Dread Pirate Roberts did to break the law and allow people to trade, drugs for cash in large amounts, you have to think about it a lot more than if you're just going to start a public facing company or just some other company. And I worry that these guys didn't think it out enough, and that if they thought it out more, they could have said, maybe we should be more generic in our marketing. Maybe we shouldn't have crazy tweets, and we definitely shouldn't have this pitch deck that says like, we raise money on illegal transactions. Like that's, even if it's true, you can't put that in the pitch deck. Like,
yeah, I mean, I personally, I'm not a big fan of them because the actual people, because they used to really troll the other group, what is it, Wasabi Wallet, and really like say nasty things about friends of mine like Vlad and stuff. So I'm not a big fan of them, but I just fundamentally at core principles, I don't think there's anything wrong with people wanting privacy in their tokens. And I don't know, a cop will go around any car and find a defect if they want to. So even if you make some goofy site, if they want to make an example of anything, they'll just say, look, we found one example of some dodgy freak, and that's then, and get all the anger and everything pointed at that. So it's not, the cops will find something on your car. They'll just go, that tail light there.
Yeah, which is why you don't make an example or give them an excuse to chase you. Because the thing is, until Bitcoin takes over the world and we genuinely have that freedom, you just have to be aware of the situation that you're in. You're in a vulnerable situation. The US government, while it still runs the US dollar, still has that power. When that's all over, fair enough. But until that point, use some common sense.
Yeah, I think they were living in a future that we haven't reached yet. So it was rough on them. But yeah, I hope for the best, like you said, Josh, for Wasabi Wallet and our good friend Max Hillebrand, who's over there. I know nothing about the company, but I hope for the best for them. I have no idea if they've done something different than Samurai Wallet and they won't be charged, or if we're just talking now in a pre-Wasabi charging phase and they're going to charge all these different things, maybe even going after Monero, like you said, Josh. So, but this will be very exciting, and we're going to keep covering it right here. So stay tuned. Moving on to issue 2, and this is a fun one too. El Salvador hackers leak the code of the state Bitcoin wallet Chivo. It started in April when the hackers leaked the entire database, which I'm told contained 5.1 million people, most of the adult population of El Salvador, as they all had to sign up for this wallet to get some free money in the government. And now the hacker group has released the actual code to the wallet. So you could make your own version, or you could find a vulnerability, or you could make a wallet that looked like the Chivo wallet. All kinds of problems here, and most of them stem from the government trying to run a software company, which we know is a bad idea. Even if you have a dictator at the top, still a bad idea. Everyone loves El Salvador, but we're critical of them. Victoria Jones, what do you think about the El Chivo wallet being leaked by hackers? First the database, and then the actual source code of the product.
Yeah, it's a bit embarrassing, isn't it, for the government of El Salvador? There are many of us in the crypto industry who've experienced the negative effects of having your data leaked. Going back to the conversation we've just been having about privacy, once people have access to that information, you get people, if they get access to your email address, the scammy emails they can send you, some of which people fall for and then end up downloading computer viruses. So it has a real negative effect when these sorts of things are leaked. And of course, it's one of the dangers of centralized organizations trying to manage a decentralized currency. Really what they should have been focusing on was getting everyone using the Lightning Network and self-custody, and maybe using some of the already established tools. And also, if it's a centralized wallet designed by the government, who's to say that there isn't a backdoor in the code? So actually, maybe the hackers are doing everyone a favor by giving them access to the sort code, because then they've got a chance to actually go in and investigate whether or not it's doing what it says it does. I mean, I know certainly when they first launched the Chivo wallet, they had lots of issues with the users actually using it, and there were already lots of tools available. So it makes you wonder why the El Salvadorian government had to have their own wallet in the first place. I think maybe it was just designed to help ease the transition and get people used to the technology. But either way, it brings up lots of issues. I mean, I praise the president for his motivation in trying to introduce his population to this new freedom technology. And of course, as I said the last time I was on, he's kind of in a bit of a difficult, well, no, it wasn't on here, it was somewhere else. He's in a bit of a difficult situation at the moment because he's trying to manage the world as it exists at the moment to move it into a completely new paradigm. And so that's ultimately going to have some compromises. I mean, ultimately, using Bitcoin and Bitcoin being established as a decentralized form of money, will not be able to support governments as they've existed up until now. And so, many of the laws and the tools that they're able to fund at the moment may not be possible in the future. So all of the things that are happening at the moment are effectively transition. And things like this just are a new lesson for people to learn things from. But yeah, certainly in the short term, I think it's a bit of an own goal, really. But I personally think it's a good thing that the hackers got access to the source code. The biggest danger is backdoors in these things from the government. So if they're exposing that, good for them.
It will be interesting to see if they find a backdoor. That does seem like a very real possibility. I think the government of El Salvador should have just released a language pack. Like Victoria's saying, they should have taken existing software, made sure it had the right language, make sure their people could understand it, and not tried to mess with the advanced code of a Bitcoin wallet, which is basically what we said at the beginning. If you rewind and watch some of the old episodes, they took on too much too fast. But as Victoria said, she wondered if they had a reason. I think when they did their rewards, when they gave everybody in the country $20 or $100 or whatever it was, I think they did it through the Chivo wallet, and they might have done it in a conservative way where, let's say you give the rewards to 100 people, but only 80 of them claim it. Well, you could just keep that other 20%. As well, for the 80 who claim it, maybe they don't take it off your platform, so you don't really have to give it to them. There's a lot of interesting accounting that they could start doing if they control the only way that people use Bitcoin in their country, and they could have given out less of these rewards. And then, of course, there's, like you said, the possibility of the backdoor and the surprise El Salvador ending that no one believes is coming, but we all know is how many Bitcoin fit in a briefcase? And the answer is all of them. All of them. Josh Shigala, what do you think about trouble with the Chivo wallet? First the database, now the actual source code.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought a centralized thing being, attacked and hacked? It was coming. I've said it multiple times on the show. We've said it multiple times on the show. That it's actually only a matter of time until someone also steals all of their Bitcoin, the whole country's Bitcoin, because it's it's a honeypot. Like it's like an exchange. So you might be holding, and this is again one of the problems of, unfortunately, of the Lightning Network. You could host your own node, obviously, but most people don't. and specifically these sorts of wallets, they tap into like a light wallet. They're not tapping into a home node where you're running your own channel. And this is unfortunate. And I've actually lost like $1,000 worth of Bitcoin through the Lightning Network because the wallet just stopped working and went away. I was like, what? Huh? And I'm not used to it in Bitcoin. I'm like, I'm used to having my own Bitcoin, you know. So it's only a matter of time, and that's really unfortunate. And this is why I don't like Bitcoin as government money. Yeah, the number will it'll make the number go up. So I like it in that sense. Obviously, we all do. It's like ETFs. Wow, great. Make the number go up higher, faster. But foundationally and fundamentally, I wouldn't want to be in a country where the government has all this Bitcoin, or my Bitcoin, you know, because that's just not the way it's meant to be. Yeah, so this is not a surprise.
It does seem funny, Josh, if a government were to offer you some kind of solution where you'd have Bitcoin, but it would all be held in Coinbase and you could never extract it, but you could send it around. It wouldn't be
Yeah,
the same, right? It's not the same as Bitcoin. It wasn't, even though everyone likes the number going up and they're all trading it like it's a stock, it's not why they made Bitcoin, right?
no, exactly. And you know, some will say, well, that's a great scaling solution because then, you know, you can send it instantly and it's already pre-confirmed. But it there's two things there. It stops the 21 million because you don't know how many there are. There's this where fractional reserve comes in. This is why, you know, banks could just take some gold and then say, well, we've got way more, so we'll issue way more credit. And you know, it's the perfect way of doing money, except it's not. It's crap.
Well, and it reminds me, Josh, of the fight we had many, many years ago with Change Tip. Everyone comes along and they say, oh, Bitcoin's great, but I could improve it by running it in my database and I'll keep track of it and I'll send it around. And you can trust my database, even if it gets hit, 2,000 times from 100 different servers. It'll be fine. And it
Yeah.
wasn't fine. They had problems on their internal database. This was never publicly released, but I've heard from people that, yeah, they had problems with the exact kind of things you think they'd have problems with: double spends, transactions coming in simultaneously, managing people's funds, the complexity, and so forth. And they basically just created a system inside a system managing Bitcoin. And in many ways, that's what Coinbase is. That's what these ETFs are. It's just different people, different software people managing the Bitcoin. And that's not really what this is supposed to be about. We've gone very far away from Satoshi and one computer, one miner, and all these kind of ideas. But this core idea of actually owning Bitcoin and sending it around and using it as a currency, we seem to be getting further and further away from that.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Sorry,
Let's
I've
go
got a
to.
puppy here just eating everything around. Ugh.
Oh,
I'm just trying to like stop the puppy from eating everything.
well, let's go to Dan Eve. Dan Eve, what do you think? They hacked Chivo Wallet. They got the database, and now they got the source code.
Yeah, so obviously it's bad, right? But it's happened to the biggest of them. Ledgers. I think you can still right now you can go and search for the Ledger list of like their mailing list, and then also there's a separate list of who actually bought the Ledger. And so Sony have been hacked, Facebook have been hacked. So you kind of almost it's bad, but you kind of almost expect it. But I think they missed the trick there with the kind of kicking off Bitcoin as being an accepted currency in the country when they could have used like an open source. They could have created an open source Lightning wallet and made a big kind of education kind of thing about it as well, rather than making it closed source. So if anything, it's good that it's now at least open source. Maybe that's going to be a bit forcing their hand at making it open source and improving it in general. And maybe that will get more people on board that didn't like the experience of the wallet first time round. But yeah, ultimately good move in the right direction of being open source.
They could have like made every modem run a node, so that and taught people, like you said, taught people how to get your mobile to sync to your node, so your node has the channel. It's totally custodian. It opens a Lightning channel and boom, But instead, Sketchy wallets.
Well, exactly. And I think Dan makes a good point about open source here. There's many reasons to have open source, especially if you're a government. It's like using a library to program. You have other people writing your code. It's being checked by other people. You can make small changes. You could have educational things about it. You could look at the code. But then there's one big reason why you wouldn't want that. And I think Victoria covered it again. There could be a backdoor in there. As long as the source is closed source, you could have a backdoor, or like Josh was saying, you could have a whoopsie. Maybe somebody made it so all the money sends to somebody's brother in Costa Rica, and it just whoopsie, we sent all the money because it was written wrong, at Stack Overflow or something, right? And that'll be another reason that they use when the money eventually disappears. They'll be like, we wrote it wrong. We put the wrong zero in the wrong place, and now all the money's gone. So, but again, we have to wait for that. They're not ready for that future yet. But let's keep moving here. Let's go on to issue 3. Issue 3, Bitcoin post-halving. The demand is estimated to be 5 times greater than the supply, according to Bitfinex. The new Bitcoin added to the market could drop to $30 million per day. This is what we've been talking about. When the amount of Bitcoin goes down from 6 to 3, there's much less Bitcoin on the market, and there's much more chance of a supply squeeze, which when they go and they buy up all the Bitcoin on the market and there's none left to buy, suddenly that one that's remaining becomes incredibly valuable, right? We also were watching during the halving party, we discussed why the blocks might come faster and why people might turn on kind of secret extra mining factories, whatever they've got, whatever new things they've got to try to get that special halving block. It turns out that it turned out really well for the mining company that found it. They sold the first Satoshi of Bitcoin's fourth halving block for 33.3 Bitcoin, worth over $2.1 million for a single rare Satoshi. So that market's definitely heating up, and that explains the fast blocks that we had. Josh Shigala, what do you think about post-halving and the possibility of a supply squeeze?
It's not a possibility. It's designed by design. It's an absolute. So yeah, it's huge. And the funny thing is, so many people used to always say, "Hey, but how's there ever going to be enough Bitcoin? Yeah, there's only 21 million." But actually, you could run the entire world economy on one Bitcoin because you could just add more zeros. We can go past 8 decimal points. It's just we haven't, and it's not a big deal to add more decimal points. So that cake can be sliced thinner and thinner and thinner, and that's what will happen because the supply of whole Bitcoin is less, but the slices that it can be sliced into is infinite. And and I've even seen people that are just so daft, and these are like politicians and stuff, saying, "Yeah, but if you can slice them, if you can have infinite amounts of Satoshis in there, then that's inflation." It's like, how can you be so fundamentally dumb? If you take one cake and you make 1 billion of the cakes, everyone will be sick and tired of tasting your crappy cakes. They'll be like, "Nah, not another one of those cakes. I can't handle it." And so the price will drop because no one will want your cakes anymore because you've just made way too many of those cakes. Now let's turn it around and say you've got one cake and everyone's talking about this cake, and you can slice that cake down to the atomic level and people can still taste it. How valuable is that one cake? More valuable, you fools. So yeah, it's very different and it's amazing. And let's see what happens.
It really does seem like it's designed to do that, Josh, and you feel kind of crazy from the very beginning. I remember when we went from 25 to 12 and a half Bitcoin for block reward, and you're looking at the chart and you're like, well, it keeps going down and the number of units is locked at 21 million. And I believe the programmers are pretty strong about not changing either of those two things. And you'd need a huge consensus. Then the miners would have to agree, and even the users to some point with the nodes would have to agree. And from the very beginning, it's just seemed like Bitcoin just goes up. And there's been all this ups and downs and price this and the triangles and all these charts. But I think, Josh, for you and I, looking at this from the beginning, you mean the supply is going down and the number of units is fixed. Well, that means that the underlying unit's going to be more valuable in the future if this system is successful.
It's
And
a
I think
no-brainer. It's a
it
no-brainer.
just seems that way. Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, many of us earlier Bitcoiners, we had to sell because we've got things to do. We got rent to pay and electricity to pay and stuff. So it's not always a panacea, but yeah, it's definitely number go down, which makes number go up technology.
And it does seem obvious from the beginning, but yeah, I agree, Josh. It wasn't that easy, and you couldn't just say it was worth 50K and pay your rent with it. Your rent still wanted the actual money in the time period.
Yeah,
But
but I
let's
love
go.
the fact that was that an ordinal, that Satoshi then? Was that
That's a whole nother question there, Josh. I think ordinals are actually printed on there like the inscriptions, like the runes, I guess. But this is actually they're collecting the rare Satoshi. So there's a guy
yeah,
who's going to an exchange and he withdraws a Bitcoin, runs it through his program, and he sees if there's any like old Satoshis. And I think that
right.
this is more of that.
Okay, wacky.
So, and it's
That's
hard to
Some
amazing.
take because yeah,
Bitcoiners
like
just have too much money.
there's
Yeah.
this belief now like they'll go back and collect other sats from like other historic blocks and they'll say that they're more valuable than other sats because collector's mania, the same old thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But so does that mean Sats are non-fungible?
Yes. Yeah, well, because they have a number on them. So part
Uh-huh.
of the what's interesting about, and I think you've seen this, Josh, with curio cards, where for whatever reason, Rhett didn't put issue number on the curio cards. So every
Yeah,
curio card number one looks the same as every other number one. You could trade
yeah.
them. But if we'd done like a lot of the more modern projects or some of the other ones and printed them so that Apple number one, number two, number three, I could say Apple number one is more valuable than Apple number three. And that's
Yeah.
what's happening with these Satoshis. Because the Satoshis, just as a computer science thing, were numbered, now these collector people are saying this numbered one is more valuable than this other numbered one, despite the
Mm,
fact that atomically they're both Satoshis, right? They're electrons, like they have no
mm,
difference.
yeah.
But this electron has a lower number, so it's more valuable. But yeah, this is the kind of mania that comes after a while to Bitcoin. And there's only a matter of time before they reevaluate what makes a valuable Satoshi. I know already I had people who had, had transactions with Peter Todd or Adam Back, and they were like saving those sats. They were like special sats.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe that's a thing for the future. They'll be collecting mad Bitcoin Satoshis or something else. I don't know. Let's go
Yeah.
to Dan. Eve, what do you think, Dan? If you got a collectible Satoshi, and what do you think about the Bitcoin post-halving situation? I was saying to Josh, I say, oh, it's going to double and triple, and I tell my friends I feel insane. Not financial advice, of course, but it really does seem structurally, if the supply keeps going down and the amount stays fixed, the price must go up.
Yeah, yeah. The only thing is that is with each kind of Bitcoin halvening epoch, though, the amount of Bitcoin that's being reduced is less significant based on the supply that's already out there, right? So, if for example, in the first epoch where it's 50 per block, there was 7,200 Bitcoin per day. And now we're going down to 450 per day. So the impact of that the halvening, I think, is less as time goes on. But we're seeing more and more of these crazy use cases, which are irrelevant of the actual block reward. The actual subsidies for mining fees are going through the roof because of ordinals and inscriptions and all these other use cases that people are seeing. So we're probably going to see the what I don't know what would be cool, but almost like the flippening of what quite soon really of where the actual fees for inscriptions and all these other side events, sideshows are going to be way more than the block reward continuously. But by a country mile. So that's probably not going to be too far away, surely, the way things are going. But yeah, I think it's good to see that Bitcoin isn't just hard money. There's other use cases for it as well. And, people have been saying for a while that it's been great to see Bitcoin used as like a time stamping machine. It immortalizes an event by hashing it into the Bitcoin blockchain. And so that's just one other crazy use case, and obviously ordinals, inscriptions are other ones that we're seeing as well. And the block space is sacred in Bitcoin, and it's only going to pump the fees, pump the price of Bitcoin up even more as people are fighting for that block space, as they do on these other chains with their crazy cat NFTs and shit.
It is interesting, Dan, that NFT is something that no one liked when they came out, and ordinals and inscriptions and all these things could be the thing that saves the Bitcoin fee market. We always talked about what people are going to do when the block reward goes down to less than a Bitcoin or less than half a Bitcoin. And it turns out, at least from the current information we have, they're going to collect inscriptions and runes and ordinals, and they're going to keep the network running because it's in the best interest of their collections. Victoria Jones, what do you think about the Bitcoin post-halving situation, and of course, rare and valuable Satoshis?
Yes, I mean, when I wrote my book in 2019, one of the things I commented on, well, I've got a whole chapter talking about how businesses can handle the change in the value of Bitcoin over time, because it does seem to have this predictable price cycle based on the halvening and the fact that as the supply goes down, the demand goes up, especially as the pie gets bigger. It's certainly a logical conclusion. But a lot of that is based on what Bitcoin is valued compared to the US dollar. And of course, one of the things most Bitcoiners are familiar with is the fact that, we seem to be heading for hyperinflation with the dollar because of all of the debt that's being printed behind the scenes. And so, when in an environment of inflation, that's absolutely it is a logical conclusion. And I think that's one of the things that feeds the hype of the price. I think one of the things that people are possibly not considering, though, and my next newsletter is going to be about this. I'm writing it on Bitcoin and inflation. And in it, I talk about the history of inflation. And although many of us are familiar with the fact that Nixon took the US off the gold standard in 1971 by temporarily suspending the convertibility of the dollar. That's not the first time in history that happened. It actually also happened in 1797 when Britain was fighting the Napoleonic Wars. And in fact, that's actually what gave Britain an advantage when it was fighting with Napoleon. And the only way they were able to get back onto their gold standard was because they won an indemnity when the Napoleonic Wars were over. But if they'd lost the Napoleonic Wars, that would have literally been the end of the British Empire, because they had completely, they were really starting to make their currency vulnerable by the fact that they did that. So in order to get back onto the gold standard, one of the things they had to do was withdraw those extra currency units out of the system. And in doing that, they created a financial panic of 1815, because, of course, if you've inflated the assets with the extra currency units and people have taken out loans based on the increased value because of these extra currency units, when you take the extra currency units out of the situation, you automatically put a whole load of people into negative equity. Now, the financial analysts talk about the fact that, the US, people who are organizing the US financial economy will never do that in a million years, because it would have too many negative effects. But how would we know? Just because that's what we've done for the last 40 years, how do we know they're not suddenly going to change their strategy? I mean, a lot of people are talking about, potential gold backing of the US dollar in order to solve some of the problems. And interestingly, Zimbabwe have just introduced a new gold backed dollar. And one of the consequences of that is that their stock market has dropped by 99% in the last week. And so, that is one of the sudden effects you can get from deflation, and, we have administrators now who are literally getting to the stage where they have no other options. And who's to say that they couldn't pull a dramatic rabbit out of the hat like that, which could have an effect. And at the moment, until Bitcoin becomes a currency, it's still an asset. And so it could have an equally negative effect on the Bitcoin price. Now, I'm talking about an extreme example here, But I think also we also live in extreme times where anything could happen. I mean, who predicted that Zimbabwe was going to come out with the gold-backed dollar and it would have a 99% impact on their stock market? I mean, okay, that's Zimbabwe, but no one thought the US dollar was ever going to go into hyperinflation. So we just live in a time where you can't predict anything. I don't think we're going to be safe with Bitcoin. Now with the ETFs as well, which is going to is bringing all sorts of resources into the system, which can also have an effect. I don't think we're going to have those predictable cycles with Bitcoin now until something happens that breaks the financial system that makes Bitcoin the reserve currency. I think we've got a long way to go before that happens.
It is a terrible idea for Zimbabwe to introduce a currency that's better than their currency. It reminds me of when GM introduced the electric car, the EV1, but they also had the Hummer, the Humvee on their line. And they said, well, this electric car makes our Humvee look like a gross polluter. We need to get rid of this electric car. And that must have been horrible when it went down 99%. It reminds me of the great classic movie that everyone should see, Idiocracy. And when they switched from using Gatorade to using water for everything, the market went down. And as the guy said, the computer did that auto layoff thingy. We're all fired. So you got to watch out in the future for what can happen if you change to a superior product. But let's keep moving here. Check out worldcryptonetwork.com, where we've got all kinds of great shorts with all kinds of great AI generated titles. Is Bitcoin the future of finance? El Salvador's Bitcoin security physical measures versus technical. And did Coinbase's acquisition of Zappo lead to its downfall? All kinds of fun videos and more at worldcryptonetwork.com. Moving on to issue 4. Former Binance CEO Changpeng Zhao apologizes ahead of sentencing amid 161 letters of support. Mr. Zhao says that he's very sorry for running Binance in a way that allowed people to use it illegally. He says that he made poor decisions, but as those who are sentencing him say, he made these poor decisions so that his website and company would be incredibly profitable and incredibly popular, allowing anyone to trade anything they wanted. Dan, Eve, what do you think about CZ from Binance being attempted sentencing of 3 years in jail?
I think it's pretty hardcore. Like 3 years. It's not the same scale as Sam Bankman-Fried, it seems, and they did seem like they've been trying to kind of be on the right side of regulation for a long while. So, and they tried to be responsible. They had the Seifu Fund, and yeah, I don't know. I think that they may be coming down a bit hardcore. But again, I just think the crazy thing is that crypto seems to be the only industry where the CEOs and founders are being prosecuted, and I don't understand why that doesn't happen in any other industry. It's like, in fact, there's no other industry that actually you hear about this happening at this rate. So it's quite crazy, especially when they are trying to be on the right side of the regulators and trying to cozy up to them. So yeah, so I think it's a bit of a shame, to be honest. I think, but maybe I'm completely wrong. And like Sam Bankman-Fried, he pulled the wool over everyone's eyes, and he's an asshole of crypto. But he seems to be one of the nicer guys in crypto. I don't know, nicer people in crypto. So 3 years, I think, is a bit hardcore. But then they immediately replaced him with a dude from the WEF, right? That's straight in. They were like, the same day they announced that came out of left field, didn't it? Oh, I'm stepping down. I'm being done by the FBI. I'm admitting to crimes. I'm very sorry. And some dude who's replacing me is on the WEF website. Thanks very much. Goodbye. Well, seems a bit kind of backhandery, allegedly.
Well, not all the time, but sometimes I try to look at things through Brian Armstrong's eyes. And he spent all this time building Coinbase, and it's a legitimate exchange, and he works with the government. He goes to all the meetings. He even rats everybody out to the IRS. Not his greatest moment. But On the other side, you have essentially these pirates at Binance that when they were forced to pay taxes in one country, they moved to another country. When there was maybe an idea that that country would tax them as well, they moved to another country. So they're doing all these clear pirate actions. They're letting everyone use the site if they have a VPN. They're not doing any kind of tracking or controls. And because they're making tons of money off these choices, we talked before about the difference between a moral choice and a profit choice. Well, once again here, the moral choices that many of us agree with, having the freedom to invest your money, to buy whatever you want, to sell it, to move it around the world, that comes right up, and the guy makes profit off it too. So it seems like it was kind of an everything for Binance. And like you said, Dan, the best part is now the site's still running. It's an incredibly huge, popular company with hundreds of thousands, millions of users, and they cheated to get there. Poor Brian Armstrong and other people who followed the rules, followed the laws, didn't have this option of adding every altcoin under the sun. I think Binance had no fee trading for a while. There's been a lot of incredible options that they've had because, like Zuckerberg said, they were able to move fast and break things. Let's go to Victoria Jones, more on Binance and the attempt at a 3-year sentence. What do you think?
I think he was following the philosophy that it's better to apologize and ask for permission. So, and certainly from reading the article, it would seem that he's had some excellent legal advice. If you've had any kind of exposure to how the legal system works, he's doing exactly what you would do in that situation, and the prosecutors are doing exactly what they would do in that situation. And the whole point of a legal case is you fight through the arguments and they decide who wins at the end of the day. I think sometimes in those sorts of situations, the more belligerent you are and the more in denial that you are, the more likely they're likely to come down on you hard. But because he seems to be kind of going, look, I was in a difficult situation and I did the best I could. It's all depends on the degree to which the judge believes that, or whether or not they believe the prosecutors that he was doing it deliberately. And tax avoidance isn't necessarily a crime. If there are plenty of Bitcoiners who do that. If you can move to a country where you can pay less tax, why wouldn't you do that? It's just a good business decision. So yeah, it's a tricky one. I think the prosecutors, fair enough, they probably want to go for a 3-year sentence. I suspect, given his conciliatory reply, it's unlikely that he will get the full aspect of that. And to be quite honest, when it comes to financial crime, the standard operating procedure is that people are fined, and he's already paid a whopping fine.
Oh my
And
God, it's massive. 4 point
I know,
something billion
exactly.
dollars.
And also, if you're also gonna imprison people for something like that, it's like we were saying earlier. Well, what happened to all the bankers in 2008? So clear double standards. So people will certainly be asking questions if he does go to prison. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Well, it's definitely a good thing they didn't let him go back to UAE or Dubai or wherever he wanted to go before, because he would have been in a non-extradition country. And while he did pay a large fee, a large fine, he still made tons of money and made this into a giant global, worldwide business. Josh Chagall, your company Voltoro, as far as we know, never broke the rules, never violated everything, moved fast, jumped from country to country, and exactly, you're kind of the victim here. You, Coinbase, other people, Kraken should have had more volume if Binance wasn't allowed to break all the rules, go around the world, and then pay a small fine. What do you think about the possibility of CZ going to jail?
No, I think it's terrible. I just don't. I just can't. I just can't believe it. Like CZ never stole a penny. Like literally, is being as much as we don't like buying people. Bitcoin is it's shitcoin casino, yada yada yada. He has been a good player in terms of keeping a very tight ship and not losing anyone's crypto. Had a fund, a Seifu fund. So that when there was a vulnerability exploit, they, out of their own profits, covered all that, which is in their good business interest as well. Yet, this is all part of the witch hunt right now. This is all part of the witch hunt, and I see it as very, very. It's a sign of things to come. Like, where do you draw the line? Just like that cop walks around the car trying to find some sort of defect, they will find something. And yeah, whereas Sam Bankman-Fried, and it's funny seeing those two equated, actually was doing, was actually running a massively fractional reserve nonsense Ponzi there. So I think the reason why this is happening is that there was a lot of big money behind Sam, and they don't like that CZ took Sam down, because CZ is arguably the reason why that first domino fell. And Sam's dominoes could have stood a little bit longer, ready for the big money to maybe pull out. That lobby money didn't go unheard, and I think there is some political pressure, I feel, to throw basically some weight around, so that next time it doesn't happen. I don't know, but that's the feeling I get. It seems odd.
Exit question, predict the future. Will CZ go to jail? Yes or no? Dan Eve.
Yeah, I reckon he will. Maybe under a year or something, or maybe a suspended sentence, something like that. Something ground release, house release.
Victoria Jones, will he go to jail?
I think if he does, there will be people who are up in arms about it because, well, people who know, because quite frankly, if he goes to jail, especially after paying that massive fine, what the hell were they doing in 2008? So I think it will set a very unusual precedent, and there will be case to answer if they do.
You could just say it's crypto. He was a crypto guy. That means he's bad. Josh Shigala, does CZ go to jail?
I hope not. I guess it could. Anything's possible with these psychopaths.
The answer is yes, but I think Dan's right. It'll be probably less than a year, maybe 6 months, maybe 3 months after, good behavior and all that kind of thing. But it would be shocking, like Victoria say, to see someone actually punished for a financial crime in the United States. That's so rare. That hardly ever happens. Let's move on to issue 5, a nice fun issue to close with. Bitcoin Halving Party unites art and tech at Warsaw Bitcoin Film Fest. And I just thought this was a nice, great, positive story. They had a film festival in Warsaw, Poland. They played a variety of brand new Bitcoin films that I can't wait to see. They say the highlight was a movie called Dirty Coin that talked about how Bitcoin mining is using stranded and wasted energy to build renewable infrastructure. So it's probably, an ironic title. It's not such a dirty coin. And they talked about another film called Searching for Satoshi, an art collective helping educate people about Bitcoin. And they even had a new film about Bitcoin Pay Server, BTC Pay Server, that I hear we at the World Crypto Network have been included in. So I just want to say, Victoria, what do you think about the film festival? Any of the films sound interesting to you? And they also had what I've told was a great halving party out there in Warsaw. So shout out to the Bitcoiners of Poland. Sounds like a great time.
Yeah, it looks really fun, and some of the films look really fascinating. I'm sure I'll enjoy, watching some of those if we get an opportunity. Roger 9000, I've actually seen in person at the Bitcoin Adventure. I thought he was great. I'd never seen him before since I went there, and he did the chocolate thing. Yeah, sounds great. First I'd heard of it, but yeah, I wish I could have been there. It looks like a lot of fun.
I've been following them on Twitter for quite a while. They've got a great Twitter account, the Warsaw Bitcoin Crew, and it's good stuff. Josh Shigala, what do you think about the films, the film festival? Any of them sound interesting to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the fact that there's a film festival for Bitcoin. It just goes to show how many films that there can be a festival. How many films there actually are about this. It's phenomenal. I love it. So yeah, next year I'll try to make it. Yeah, it sounded like it had a good turnout too.
Yeah.
It is exciting to hear and see about these films using Bitcoin, especially when they can use Bitcoin for fundraising. They could make their own coin. They could have an NFT sale. There's a lot of ways where Bitcoin can not only be what the film's about, but it could also fundraise and help the people make the film. Dan, Eve, what do you think about the film festival? Any of them sound interesting to you?
Yeah, it seemed pretty cool. Like I wish I actually went, but sadly couldn't this year because other travels. But would have been nice to see. Yeah, and Roger I think was there as well. I read separately that he was at the event doing one of his music sets. He's amazing to watch because he's just like absolutely brimming with energy. He gets the room absolutely bouncing. So he's really cool to watch. But yeah, definitely would like to go and see it next year. That's for sure.
Sounds great. And a shout out to the Bitcoin Festival in Warsaw. Sounds like a good one. We're running out of time though, so we're going to go to predictions or story of the week. Dan, Eve, are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week?
Nah, just chilling, just taking it easy. That's it.
That's it. Taking it easy. No animals visiting your house this week. Everything is good.
Yeah.
All right. Victoria Jones, do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm currently working on my next newsletter. It's been a while because for the last few weeks I was focused on the Bitcoin Fest, and as I mentioned earlier, the next one's going to be on Bitcoin and inflation. So that's quite an interesting one worth looking at, and that can be found on my website, satoshispage.com, and I'll also pin it to my Twitter profile when it's finished as well.
Well, that sounds great. We're looking forward to that. Josh Shigala, prediction or story of the week? Go ahead.
My story of the week, I think, is when I put anything in the chat here, in next to the chat, it doesn't show up. So I just sit here for months, just basically shouting into a thunderstorm and no one hearing me.
Yeah, I thought it's been strange. It's been so long since you posted anything in there.
Yeah, because I'm sitting there, I talk, I comment to people, and then the other day,
Because you
the other
moved to
week,
Australia.
yeah, maybe.
It's true.
It was when Thomas, when you brought up the screen share of the chat, and I was like, hang on a minute, I can't see my comments anyway. That's when I realized. Anyway, so sorry about that, folks in the chat. I love the conversations there. Shout out to BTC Moon Guy and Dusty Gray, Starship Schrodinger's Destiny, and Michael. We read all your comments. Please hit that subscribe and that like, because we get up every week to do this. I get up at 5:30 in the morning over here. We love what we're doing, and it'll really help us out to spread the channel. And it motivates us. The more subscribers we get motivated to do more content and get better guests on as well. So yeah, please give us a thumbs up or a subscribe. That'd be great.
Well, we'll have to check the chat thing and make sure you're not shadow banned or something, Josh. I'd hate for that to happen by mistake. But it could have also been something that YouTube did to you. There's always a possibility they put you on a list for some reason. But
well, it's a company. It's one of those Google accounts where you pump Gmail through it and everything like that. So I'm not sure if you have to set settings for YouTube. I don't know. We'll see. I'll look into it.
That's strange. That's strange, yeah.
Das ist strange.
I don't remember what my story of the week was going to be. I'm sure it was going to be great. I don't know. I watched Full All Mankind. I think that's great. I read the second book by the guy who wrote The Martian, Andy Weir, called Artemis. It wasn't that great. I can see how people were disappointed after The Martian. But then his third book, Project Hail Mary, is really good. So I would check that out. I'm not sure what else I have to report. I guess maybe check out that show Tulsa King with Sylvester Stallone playing an old mobster. That's pretty fun. A little violent though. But also wanted to remind everyone we had a great halving party last week. Shout out to everyone who joined us. You can check that out on the channel, and we're going to have that out as a podcast soon. We had a lot of different guests from all over, and we played some clips from the last halving party we had and the halving party we had before that. So it was our third halving party. But other than that, it went pretty good. The halving turned out, like we said, a big nothing burger. Everyone got excited for nothing. We now have to wait to see, like we've all said, if the supply shock happens and when it happens, because we're not going to know until after it's happened. So we're all waiting for that now. And that's about it. Not that much going on. So thanks for joining us. And until next time, bye bye.
Bye.